So I just sat down, then it got really quiet. Like, I guess that means go. Hey, everybody, welcome. I'm Darwin, and I'm so glad to be back here and at our wonderful village church. And sing a few that I came up with that you plan one thing and then life tells you to do something else. And you might know this one. Alone in my sorrow, dead in my sin, lost without hope, no place to begin. Your love made a way, let mercy come in. When death was arrested, my life began. Ash was redeemed, and only beauty remains. My orphaned heart was given a name. My mourning grew quiet and my feet rose to dance. I'm not a good dancer, but death was arrested, my life began. Oh, your grace so free washes over me. You have made me new, and life begins with you. It's your endless love pouring down on us. You have made us new, and life begins with you. Released from my chains, I'm a prisoner no more. My shame was a ransom he faithfully bore. He canceled my debt and he called me his friend. When death was arrested, my life began. Oh, your grace so free washes over me. You have made me, begins with you. It's your endless love washing down on us. You have made me new, and life begins with you. Your grace so free washes over me, and you made me new, and life begins with you. It's your endless love washing down on us. You have made me new, and life begins with you. Oh, your grace so free washes over me. You have made me new, and life begins with you. It's that endless love pouring down on us. You have made us new, and life begins with you. I'm alone in my sorrow and dead in my sin. Lost without hope and no place to begin. But your love made a way to let mercy come in. When death was arrested, my life began. When death was arrested and my life began. Isn't that a good one? That's good. What I did was I sang here so much before with Ray Ray, and I was at home trying to think of things when Ray had called, and I thought of a few songs, and then I found, God works in good ways. I found the book that I had made that had a lot of lyrics in it and stuff, so I was like, ooh, I forgot I knew that one. That's a good one. I'm going to do that one. So it was just a lot of fun to just go back and to kind of get re-inspired for that. This is one of my favorites, too, and God, when the band plays this, if you've been walking the same old road for miles and miles, if you've been hearing the same old voices tell the same old lines, if you're trying to feel the same old holes inside, there's a better life. There's a better life. If you got pain, it's a pain breaker. If you feel lost, he's a way maker. If you need freedom or saving, he's a prison shaking savior. If you got pain, he's a pain breaker and a chain breaker. We've all searched for the certain day of the dead of night. We've all found ourselves worn out from the same old fight. We've all run to things we know that just ain't right. But there's a better life. There's a better life. If you got pain, he's a pain breaker. Feel lost, he's a way maker. If you need freedom or saving, he's a prison shaking savior. If you got chains, he's a chain breaker. If you believe it, if you receive it, if you can feel it, somebody testify. If you believe it, if you receive it, if you can feel it, you want to testify. If you believe it, if you receive it, if you can feel it, you got to testify. Oh, if you believe it, if you receive it, if you can feel it, somebody testify. If you got pain, he's a pain breaker. If you feel lost, he's a way maker. If you need freedom, saving, he's a prison shaking savior. If you got chains, he's a chain breaker. If you need freedom or saving, he's a prison shaking savior. If you got chains, he's a chain breaker. chain breaker, yes he is. So I do one more. I want. Uh-oh. Ready to do one more? This reminds me of Willie Nelson's song. My chains are gone, I've been set free. My God, my Savior has ransomed me. And like a flood, His mercy reigns, unending love, amazing grace. My chains are gone, I've been set free. My God, my Savior has ransomed me. And like a flood, His mercy reigns, unending love, amazing grace, unending love, amazing grace. Thank y'all. God bless you guys.
Give it up again. That just was a blessing, blessing, blessing. Darwin came to our church about 16 years ago and has been one of the great gifts that we have ever had in our church. And he is so wonderful. And these young guys are going to help him because he has to be somewhere else. And so they're going to be the roadie crew on right now. So, so I'm glad that they are able to do that. Hey, why don't y'all do something? Why don't you stand up and just introduce yourself to somebody maybe you don't know? Can you do that just real quickly? Introduce yourself. Tell them you're glad to have them at the village. Welcome to the village. Hey, guys. All right, everybody. It's real easy to get this started at the village and real hard to get this to stop at the village. Y'all start visiting. Well, my wife is gone again this week. She was gone last week out of town, and this week she is having to be at a family reunion. And so I miss her, and she wanted me to let you know she misses seeing all of you. And gotten to see some friends that I haven't seen in a while. It is so great to see you. And then getting to hear Darwin lead us in some songs, that was very moving to me. I hope it was very moving to you. Now's the time in our service when we always pause and we give people a chance, if they want to be able to participate financially. And it's very helpful, of course, when you're able to do that. And so we put the QR code up on the screen, and it's not up there, but it will maybe be up there in a minute. There it is. And if you'd like to give that way, that would be great. And if you want to give another way, talk to me after the service. If you wanted to give a cash gift or something, and we'll do that. But with Jane gone, and Rachel is gone, and Gail is gone, and so if you don't give electronically, then just see me afterward, all right? And if you need to give another way, that would be wonderful. Thank you, everybody who's watching online. Thank you for caring about the village and being a part of the village, and that means the world to us. Well, it's so good to see you. I'm so excited about church today. I have been all week, and let's just dive in. Is that all right? All right. So last week, on the heels of learning of the death of one of my best friends, we talked about the idea of surviving heartbreak. And I was really surprised how many villagers came up to me afterward and recounted to me stories that were fairly recent in their life where they had gone through heartbreak, and they said, you have no idea how timely this message was. When that happens, it is always a surprise, and it's always a wonderful blessing. I want to stay in that space today, similar space, but I want to expand it a little bit, and I want to talk about seasons we go through that at times are difficult or rough. Now, let me start by saying, for those who maybe are new here, our church is a little bit unusual. I don't know if you have discovered that yet or not, but we are a little bit unusual. I attended 2 premieres this week of documentaries. One was at the Midtown Arts Cinema, and I was there with these 2 guys and a few other villagers, and it was called Mama Bears, and it was about a wonderful community of women who stand behind their LGBT children and have formed this nationwide organization that comes along and says, if you're LGBT and maybe you're not embraced by your family, then we'll embrace you fully as your mama. And so it's a beautiful film. We watched it and we cried. It was beautiful. And at the documentary, I was called out by the director for being the pastor of this place. And the director, in front of everyone at the end of the movie, said, Ray Waters pastors a church in South Atlanta called the Village Church, and they are an inclusive and affirming congregation. And the whole theater erupted in applause. And they were applauding the church that you are. The church that you are. That's what they were applauding. It's all these people were saying, that's the kind of church that we need. It was moving. Then we moved next door for a little appetizers at the end of the movie. And again, people would come up, and it was almost embarrassing. They would say, thank you, thank you, thank you. And it's like, I was just wanting to say, we're just so grateful. Our church is just so grateful that God is using us in this way. Then last night, or yesterday, I went to Bryson City, North Carolina. And in Bryson City, North Carolina, they were premiering another film. And it was about a church in the mountains of North Carolina that was following the path that the Village had walked a long time ago of going from an evangelical church to a fully inclusive congregation. And this church they were going through meetings and praying and deliberating and talking to people. And then they were also talking to me and Stan Mitchell and a couple of other people. And this documentary was capturing all of those things that was going on. And I'm telling you what, I was so proud to be the pastor of the Village Church. We have been larger in our history. I don't know that we have ever been more consequential in our history than we are right now. And that's just a couple of ways that I think we are really unusual. But that's not having anything to do with the sermon. I just wanted to tell you, thank you for that. This is what I think about our church as being unusual for today. It can mean a lot of different things, but one thing it means here that's different is I think here we want everybody to be truthful about where they are on their journey. We don't want anybody to pretend. We want you to be who you are. Some churches paint a picture of following Jesus, and then they paint it like there's no more struggle. I want you to know that is a million miles from the truth. If you set your path to follow Jesus, it will be lovely, it will be beautiful, it will be inspiring, it will be freeing, but you will also go through the same hard stuff that everybody else in the world has to navigate through. I love this song. It's a hymn. We've sung it hundreds of times in my life, but listen to these words. At the cross where I first saw the light, and the burdens of my heart rolled away, it was there by faith I received my sight. And what's the next line? And now I am happy all the day. We're not. We're not. We go through seasons where we are confused. We go through seasons where we cry. We go through seasons where we're depressed. In life, there are seasons of sorrow. There are seasons of grief. There are seasons of depression. There are seasons of lack sometimes. There are seasons of pain sometimes. And these seasons, I want to talk to you today about them, understanding them like valleys. Valleys that we go through. Probably the verse that is most known in the Bible referring to valleys is in the 23rd Psalm. You will remember this. Psalm 23, verse 4, David is writing, and David says, even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. I want to look particularly at even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death. In Hebrew, this verse is literally translated the valley of deep darkness. Anybody ever been in a valley of deep darkness? We've been there, haven't we? Many scholars describe a literal valley of the shadow of death. They say that David, in and around Jerusalem, there was a place literally that was the valley of the shadow of death. It was a valley that he probably took his sheep through when he was a young shepherd boy. They say it was a steep, deep, and narrow canyon They say that the sun only hit the bottom of the canyon when it was directly overhead at high noon. And they say the rest of the time, this canyon was dark. David probably led his sheep through the valley of the shadow of death as he was growing up, and he later would use that phrase as a metaphor in the most famous psalm in our Bible. As you look in the Bible, the term valley is also used other ways. Joshua talks about the valley of calamity, the valley of calamity, which means sudden distress. In Psalm 84, the Bible talks about the valley of weeping. Hosea talks about the valley of trouble. I don't think I have to do much convincing that valleys are real and they are a big deal. One question I've been thinking about this week is this: how does one best get through those dark valleys? We're not talking about a brief encounter that's painful. We're talking about a season that becomes a valley for you. How do you work through them? How do you best get through the dark valleys of your life? I think there's some things that are helpful to try to remember if you can. One thing I try to remember is valleys are unavoidable. It's a part of life. Valleys are unavoidable. This is what I mean about our church wanting to be so truthful about the spiritual journey that we are honest about the fact that you'll go through seasons or valleys that are painful, and we are there with you. We don't judge you because we're going through similar situations in our life as well. We all will go through them. Spiritual devotion to God is not valley-free. Spiritual devotion to God, you'll still have valleys. You'll have seasons or valleys your whole life. That is life. How you process those valleys is what makes the difference. Valleys happen throughout life, and after every mountaintop, think about it, after every mountaintop experience, you know what often happens to you? You go into a valley. Jesus was very realistic about it. Please never forget, Jesus said these words, "I've told you these things so that you in me will know you can have peace, and that you'll know in this world you will have trouble. I have told you these things so that in me you may have peace, but in this world you will have trouble." It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. When is it going to happen? You're going to have difficulties, disappointments, discouragements. There'll be times of suffering and sorrow and sickness, and there'll be times of frustration and failure. Those things will happen. Here's the second thing I try to remember. Not only is it unavoidable, you will go through difficulties in your life, but the second thing I try to remember is they're unforeseeable often. You don't get a warning that you're about to go into a valley. It just kind of sneaks up on you and happens. I wish that we could get a warning. Hey, 2 weeks from Thursday, it's going to get bad for a long time. That would be wonderful. But how many of you have ever had a flat tire at a really great time to have a flat tire? I never. I'm always dressed to go to a wedding or something, and then it's like, thum, 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 and it's like, oh, dear God, I don't even know how to change a tire. Now I got to figure out how to change the tire right here in my suit, and I'm on the side of the road trying to hope somebody will come and stop and help me. We don't have warnings for those things. We don't have flat tires at good times. Valleys often come suddenly to us. They're unpredictable. It's a phone call. It's a letter. It's a routine doctor's checkup. It's a freak accident that happens. Valleys are unforeseeable. They just come. Here's another thing I want you to get. Valleys are unbiased. Valleys are unbiased. When I say that, I mean no one is immune to them. It doesn't matter how wonderful you're living your life. It doesn't matter if you're getting up early and praying on your knees for 30 minutes that God will bless you and help you. It doesn't matter. Bad things happen to people who are trying to do it right and people who are trying to do it wrong. Bad things happen. Jesus said this: God causes the sun to rise on the evil and the good and sends rain on the righteous and the unrighteous. Good and bad things happen to people regardless of where they are in their life. Here's a fourth thing I want you to remember, and this is big because some of you are going through valleys, and you need to remember this. Valleys are supposed to be temporary. They're supposed to be temporary. They're not supposed to last the rest of your life. They are a tunnel you are going through, but they are not the rest of your life. They have an end to them. David says, even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death. I'm not camping there. I'm not living there. This is not my home forever. This is just a valley I'm walking through. I don't stay in it the rest of my life. When you're in a valley, you often think it's a dead end, but it's not. It's a tunnel. There's a beginning and there's an end, and you'll go through that tunnel, and eventually you'll come out on the other side. Eventually you'll be back in the light again. This is one of my favorite little things that the Bible says. This is in the King James Version of the Bible, but every time I see this in the King James, it makes me smile. There's a little thing that's said so many times in the King James, it came to pass. It came to pass. It didn't come to stay. It came to pass. That's a way of denoting the moving on of the story. You're in the valley, but it came to pass. Now we've walked out of the valley. I like that thought about valleys. You will get on the other side. Remember this, the valley you're in today won't last because it didn't come to stay. It came to pass. Is that up there? Can we say that? Yeah, let's say that together, all of us. The valley you're in today won't last. It didn't come to stay. It came to pass. So I want you to remember that. It came to pass. It came to pass. It came to pass. Peter said this in 1 Peter chapter 1, there's a wonderful joy ahead, even though the going is rough for a while down here. There is a wonderful joy ahead, even if the way is rough for a while down here. Here's another thing I try to remember about valleys. They can serve a helpful purpose. I can learn things. I can become the man, the human that I need to be when I navigate through a valley. Valleys can actually serve you, whether it's doubt or depression or despair or discouragement or defeat. Your life can literally move forward and grow and become strong because of valleys you have had to cross. So if you think you're going through a lot of stuff, you feel like it's really been you've had a lot of these, guess what? You have more opportunity to grow. You have more opportunities to become larger in this life. You have more opportunities to become fully alive because they can serve you that way. Look at 1 Peter again, the text we read a moment ago, but this time I'm reading from the Message, a paraphrase. Listen to this. I know how great this makes you feel. What that's talking about is the people's acceptance of God. Peter is saying, I know how great you accepting God has made you feel. Let's keep reading. Even though you have to put up with every kind of aggravation in the meantime. Pure gold put in the fire comes out of it proved pure. Faith put through the suffering comes out proved genuine. When Jesus wraps this all up, it's your faith, not your gold, that God will have on display as evidence of his victory. These things will make you strong. Your faith goes from just words. Yeah, I believe in God. Yes, I want to follow God. Yes, I believe. All these things I believe. Those are words. Good for you, good with the words. But when you go through valleys, those words become who you are. They become your life. They become what you're holding on to. They become what is in you that's causing you to grow. They become significant. They serve you. Your faith grows in the valley. So we enjoy the mountaintops. Of course we do. And we'll have a lot of mountaintops in this life. But you know when we grow? In the valley, every time. That's where we grow. So maybe you're in university right now to grow, to learn. I believe it is, Charles. I believe he is going through right now where he needs to be to grow and become the man he needs to be. Faith is strengthened in the valleys, but not in the good times of life. It's in the valleys. This helps me. Your character is built in the valleys of life. Your character, who you are, is built in the valleys of life. Growing in our valleys can make us more like Jesus. And Jesus wasn't exempt from valleys. No. Did he suffer? Of course he did. Did he go through times of loneliness? Yes, he did. Was Jesus ever tempted to be discouraged? Absolutely. Was Jesus ever misunderstood or maligned or criticized? Yes, he was. So you're just following the path that Jesus lived when you go through valleys. Now, I want to finish the talk with some things that I try to do when I'm in a valley. And again, I wrestle with this because I don't want you to think this is just a simple, easy prescription. I want you to know that the essence of it all only really becomes reality when you are in union with God. Right? If this is just an intellectual exercise where I'm going to tell you some things like we're doing a seminar and I say do A, B, C, and it's it, that's not going to work. You have to understand that the basis of it all is union with God through Christ. And if that is the way you are living your life, union with God through Christ, then these are things that I try to put into practice that are helpful. Let's remember the psalm again. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I'll fear no evil, for you are with me, your rod and your staff comfort me. Here's the first thing I try to remember. Don't panic. Don't panic and then get myself stuck in discouragement. And I have done that before. I have panicked and I have been stuck, and I don't think that's the way it's supposed to be. Did you pick up on the imagery? Even if I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, to walk means calmly. He's not running through it. He's not sprinting through it. He's not rolling in the ground trying to figure out how to get through it. He's just walking through the valley calmly, deliberately, making steps, taking steps through the valley. I'm not panicked. I walk calmly through the valley of the shadow of death. After getting robbed, a few years ago, I got robbed at gunpoint in front of my house. Kind of a scary thing. I was sitting out in my car waiting for someone to show up that I was supposed to take home. So I was sitting in my car, parked on the street, and I was doing something you should never do when you're sitting in your car parked on the street, and that's I was scrolling through Facebook, and I did not see the SUV that turned its lights off and pulled up right beside me, nor the masked gunman that got out of the SUV and tapped on my window and then put the gun to my head and said, I want your money and I want your phone. So it was fast. It happened very fast. And then I went to the door and I banged on the door and Jane the door and I said, I just got robbed, and the police came out. And it was crazy. But later that night, this was about 10 o'clock. Later that night, I couldn't sleep. It was about 1:30. And I remember getting up and I remember saying, you know what? I can't let this fear, this is my house. This is my street. I can't let fear control me. So I remember going outside about 2 in the morning, and I was just walking on my sidewalk saying, this is my house, this is my street, I'm not going to let the devil win. And just about that time I saw a car turn on my street, and I ran like crazy back into the house. I just said, I'm not lying. I ran to that house. So sometimes we do panic when we're in a bad situation, right? We do panic a little bit. You may panic when you first get into your valley. You may panic. But as soon as you can, stop panicking. God's with you. God's on your side. God's going to help you see it through. I remember hearing this in a country song a few years ago. When you're going through hell, keep going. Right? You don't want to stop. When you're going through hell, don't stop. Keep going. You're going to get to the other side. Refuse to get stuck in panic. Staying in a prolonged state of panic can lead to discouragement, and you don't want to be there. I believe that for many of us, discouragement, some of us get stuck in discouragement. And I want to say, and I want to be careful to say this, there is such a thing as clinical depression, right? We don't deny that. We have people in our church that have struggled with clinical depression, and we want them to face it. We want them to get the help they need. It is real. But for those who don't have clinical depression that maybe needs medication, for those who don't need that, then I want you to know you can do some things that will help you get out of discouragement, out of living in that state of discouragement all the time, that down feeling all the time. Again, if it's clinical depression, please get seen by proper people who can help you. Joy Conklin right here, she's a therapist. She can help you. She can point you in the right direction. I'll point you in the right direction. But if you're not clinically depressed, don't settle for a life of discouragement all the time. I believe this slide up on the screen is true. I believe depression is legitimate. But I also think that if you don't exercise, eat nutritious food, get sunlight, get enough sleep, consume positive material, and surround yourself with support, then for those who aren't clinically depressed, you aren't giving yourself a fighting chance. Do those things, and it'll give you a fighting chance to not get stuck in discouragement, which can be a real difficulty. Discouragement can be a choice. I'm not saying it is, but discouragement can be a choice. You don't want to be choosing to stay discouraged. Here's some affirmations that I try to go through in my mind when I'm in a valley and I'm getting discouraged. Here's some things I try to say in my mind. I am learning things in the valley. I am learning things in this valley I am in that I would not learn any other way. I am becoming stronger in this valley than I could ever be outside of this valley. I am becoming stronger. I'm going to be able to help others because of what I'm learning right now. I'm going to be able to offer real help to people. God is here, even if I can't sense it right now because I'm feeling discouraged. And even though I'm discouraged, I know and believe with everything in me, God is with me. And people have experienced valleys for as long as people have been on the earth. I'm not unusual because I'm going through a valley. Billions of people have gone through valleys before me. And then finally, I have power in me that is divine. I have the power of God resident in me. And I believe you do too. I believe we all do. I believe the issue is discovering it, realizing it. You have the breath of God in you. And God can see you through. God will see you through. Colossians 1:11 says this, we also pray that you'll be strengthened with all his glorious power so that you will have all the endurance and patience that you need. And you're going to need some endurance. Sometimes you're going to feel like you don't have any more energy, and I get that, but that's when you have to recognize God is with you and in you, and God will give you the strength to take those next steps. You may not even know how, but God will help you. I try to remember I'm not alone. David said, for you are with me. You are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. I love Isaiah 43:2 in the Message. Listen to this. When you're in over your head, God says, I'll be with you. When you're in a rough waters, you will not go down. When you're between a rock and a hard place, it won't be a dead end because I am God, your personal God. So back in Psalm 23, verse 4, there's a strategic change in the language. When you're reading the Psalms, 23rd Psalm, David is saying all of the things about God. He is saying, God leads me beside still waters. God restores my soul. God this, God this, God this, God this. But then he says, yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, he says, you. No longer is he talking about God. He's talking about you. You are with me. You give me the strength. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You. It's not third person God. It is intimate you. It's no longer a religion, it's a relationship. You are with me. Another helpful practice in the valley, and this was the last point last week, but it's a good point, so I'm going to make it again this week, is to learn to lean into God's comfort, to lean into God's guidance, to just say, during this hard time, I'm going to lean into God. David reminds himself that God's rod and his staff comfort him. Can I tell you what that means? The rod and staff were the two basic tools that a shepherd used. A rod was basically about 2 feet long, and at the end of it was a heavy knot. And shepherds were very skilled at if something was attacking their sheep, they could throw that rod and it would hit whatever it was supposed to hit, and they would run off and the sheep would be protected. When you're in a valley, God's rod is protecting you. God is there. The good shepherd is fighting for you. You're fighting for your life. I get it. The good shepherd is with you, and he's fighting with you. Your staff comforting me. A staff was a long stick with a hook at the end, and the shepherd could use the staff to guide the sheep, to comfort the sheep, to draw the sheep close to him. He could use the staff to lift them up if he had to pull them out of a ravine or something they had slipped into. He could use that to pull them up. God can do that with us. God pulling us up, God helping us, God there, God involved, God engaged, God with us, God never leaving us, never leaving us. Now, can I prove any of this stuff? No. I can just tell you I've got 60 years of going through a bunch of valleys, and I can tell you as I look back, God never left me. Even when I didn't feel God's presence, God was always there, and God will be there for you. Finally, last thing, get clarity on your situation. When you're in a valley, try to get clarity, and by that I mean, you've heard the quote that 85% of what we worry about never comes to pass. In the valley, get clarity about what is really going on. Don't make it worse than it is. It could be bad. Don't pile on and try to make it worse than it is. Any of y'all remember as a kid seeing a shadow in your bedroom at night of maybe a tree or something? And the more you looked at that, the more it looked for sure like somebody with a gun outside your window. But you were pretty sure somebody was outside your window with a gun, and it was the same tree that had been in your front yard your whole life. But that shadow just did something to you. In the near darkness, you just see the shadows on the wall. Make sure that you know you're seeing shadows, not this frightening, scary thing that's about to get you. David says, even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death. Shadow of death. In other words, I'm walking through something that has the power over me of a shadow. David didn't say he was walking through the valley of death. He's walking through the valley of the shadow of death. One day, someday, a shadow is going to fall over your life. You can count on it. And you'll experience one of those shadow moments. When those times come, you need to remember 3 important things. And I love the way this is illustrated on the screen. Shadows are always bigger than the reality. Shadows are always bigger than the reality. How many of us have pushed the panic button? We're going down. This is it. It's over. And it's not over. It's not over. Here's something else. Shadows cannot hurt you. They can't. Ever been run over by a shadow of a truck? It doesn't hurt. It just goes right on by. Shadows are images without substance. Kids are afraid of the shadow. We almost put these up. I went on YouTube and looked up kids being afraid of their shadows. These little kids, when they first see their shadow and they try to get away from it and they scream and cry, and I thought it would be too traumatic for us to watch these poor little kids scared out of their mind because of their shadows. We do that. And here's the last thing I want to say to you. There is no shadow without a light somewhere. You get it? It's impossible to have a shadow without a light somewhere. So when you're going through a dark valley and you think the sun has stopped shining, maybe God is dead, you're all alone, you can't see anything but darkness all around you, and that dang shadow, that's all you see. But if you're seeing a shadow, there's a light somewhere. You just have to be willing to find it. You just have to be willing to turn to that light. When you start to get afraid of the shadow in the dark valleys of life, turn your back on the shadow and look directly at the light, and the shadow will fall behind you. When you're afraid, don't look at the shadow. look at the light. And you know what Jesus said? I am the light of the world. I'm the light of the world. When you look at him, his light has a way of making the shadows not very scary. I know I sing old songs, and there's a reason for that. I'm kind of old, and it's the songs that I know because I've sung them for so long. But there's an old song, we used to sing it here. Turn your eyes upon Jesus. Look full in his wonderful face. And the things of this world will grow strangely dim in the light of his glory and grace. I know there's a handful of people here that would say right now, Ray, I'm in a valley. I want you to know God is going to see you through. And you're coming out of your valley, and there's going to be victory on the other side. Hang in there. Don't give up. Fix your eyes upon the light of the world and let God see you through. Would you bow your heads, please? God, we thank you for this day. We thank you for this precious congregation. We thank you for this church and what it represents. We thank you for the fact that we believe God is with us, and God loves us, and God is compassionate and good and walks with us through every difficulty and every valley we walk through in this life. May we leave this place today with our eyes fixed on the light of God. Help us always see God's goodness, and help us as we walk out of that valley. And we pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. Hey, y'all, let me tell you something that I did. It's my bad. Next week is Pride in Atlanta. In previous years, we've taken a big group to Pride. This year, we're not registered for that. But I know many people are going to go to Pride next week. Jane and I will be gone Saturday night. We have to leave Saturday to go to Dahlonega for a wedding Saturday afternoon. But we're going to probably go to Pride Saturday morning. And so if you want to get connected with villagers and just find out where maybe some people might be hanging out, just contact me and I'll hook us up, okay? I'll hook us up with Matt and Alejandro and anybody else that maybe is going to be down there. And it's wonderful. If you've never gone, go and just love people and just be gracious and kind and celebrate all the wonderful people that are there. And anyway, if y'all are interested, just reach out to me and I'll let you know how we can kind of connect, all right? I'll see everybody next Sunday, and it means the world when you're here. It means the world when you're here. Thank you for being here. Blessings to you. Have a great day.